I never thought revenge on my mom would lead me here, sleep-deprived, broke, and convinced I was chosen. I told myself it was growth, but deep down I knew I was losing something I'd never get back. Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day. Why did I end up in a cult? Honestly, it started way before the compound, before the white clothes and the chanting. It started with my mom lecturing me at the kitchen table while I was just trying to finish my homework. I had turned down an internship at my uncle's company. It wasn't paid, and let's be real, his business was under investigation for fraud. But to my mom? That didn't matter. "You're way too picky about opportunities," she scolded, arms crossed like she was handing down a sentence. I tried explaining. "It's unpaid. And your brother might be indicted, Mom." But she just waved me off. "You always have excuses. You turned down the modeling gig at the mall, that financial mentorship program from the neighbor. Opportunities don't just land in your lap twice." I stared at her, speechless. That creepy photographer at the mall had asked if I was comfortable doing lingerie shots. And the so-called mentorship? It was literally a pyramid scheme. But she wasn't hearing me. "Your generation thinks everything has to be perfect from the start. What if just once you tried saying yes?" And for the next week she went all in on this philosophy. Following me around, quoting motivational posters, even calling my guidance counselor to complain I was too selective. I finally snapped. After she dragged me out of bed at 6 in the morning to talk about my lack of ambition, I blurted, "Fine. From now on I'll say yes to every single opportunity that comes my way." Her face lit up. She actually hugged me. "That's the first mature decision you've made in years." I smiled back, but inside? Oh, I was already plotting. Monday, a slick guy at the mall cornered me about his financial freedom program. $500 up front. "Yes, I'm very interested," I said, pulling out my mom's credit card. The way her face drained when she saw the charge? Worth every penny. By Tuesday, her phone was blowing up because that guy had signed her up for 17 different recurring charges. He even started calling her book club friends using her contact list. "Why is your son pitching me colon cleanses?" one woman asked. I sat back and watched Mom's humiliation with ice-cold satisfaction. Wednesday, our neighbor asked if I'd help with his exotic animal rescue. Illegal, obviously. "Absolutely," I said, volunteering my mom's house as a foster spot. That evening she came home to pythons in the bathtub and a capuchin monkey smashing her grandmother's china. Thursday, a buddy's brother wanted to host a music festival in our backyard. I said yes. By Friday, the phone was ringing nonstop about Karen's Kool-Aid acid test, and then the police came knocking. Every disaster made me feel stronger. For once, she was the one scrambling. By Saturday, she was begging me to stop. That's when Phoenix arrived. He was my uncle's substitute speaker, promoting some transformational leadership program in Oregon. I agreed to attend without hesitation, and my mom cried the whole 2-hour drive. When we pulled up, Phoenix was waiting at the gate dressed head to toe in white. He looked at me, not just at me but into me, and said, "This young man has exceptional energy. Your son has been dimming his light to make others comfortable." My chest tightened. No one had ever said anything like that to me. He showed us photos of smiling people working in gardens, described how they'd found freedom through surrender. Then he said words that felt like he had stolen them straight out of my soul. "Jackson has spent his whole life trying to meet impossible standards set by people who don't understand his true nature." My mom protested, but I froze. How did he know? When he explained their 6-month isolation period, I opened my mouth to use it as one last jab at Mom. But then Phoenix put his hand on my shoulder. His voice softened. "You don't have to perform for anyone here, Jackson. We already see your worth." And my eyes burned. Because in that moment, I couldn't remember anyone ever saying I was enough just as I was. My mom was sobbing, warning me about cults and brainwashing. But Phoenix kept talking. "Your mother loves you, but she's been forcing you into a shape that was never yours. Some paths are extraordinary, too extraordinary for families to understand." And something cracked open in me. When he handed me the paperwork, I didn't feel like I was pretending anymore. I wanted what he was describing more than anything. "This isn't real," Mom cried. But Phoenix smiled at me like he already knew. And I understood why people joined. That feeling of being chosen, being special? It was intoxicating. I turned to my mom and said, "You told me to say yes to everything. And this feels like the first real yes." Her face collapsed as she realized I meant it. That all her criticism had left me desperate enough to believe the first stranger who made me feel valuable. And Phoenix? He was already guiding me through the tall wooden gates, his hand steady on my shoulder. Inside, about 20 people in white turned to face us. Their smiles were wide, too wide, and they started clapping, surrounding me with hugs and whispers of, "Welcome." For a second I forgot this had started as revenge. Because the warmth of their touch felt so different from the cold distance I'd lived with my whole life. Phoenix led me deeper past gardens, past a barn-turned-temple, then up to a tiny room with just a twin bed and a dresser. "Simplicity helps us focus on inner growth," he said. And even though the place was bare, when he called me exceptional for recognizing truth so quickly, I felt a glow I couldn't deny. Mom pushed in behind us, desperate, pulling at my arm. "This isn't what I meant," she begged. But I looked her straight in the eye and told her this was exactly what saying yes looked like. Phoenix nodded, pride shining in his eyes, as though I'd just passed the most important test of my life. And that's how I stepped into a cult, believing it wasn't a punishment but an escape. He slid a thick packet across the desk toward me, his fingers tapping it like it contained the answers to everything I'd been searching for. "This is the initiation process," Phoenix said calmly, like he wasn't about to upend my entire life. He explained the 6-month isolation period, how it was absolutely essential for breaking the toxic patterns society and family had forced on us. I skimmed the pages. No outside contact. Hand over personal property. Mandatory participation in all activities. On paper, it looked suffocating. But the way he framed each rule, protection from the corrupt outside world, it almost sounded reasonable. Like shackles disguised as safety. And I signed. I signed without reading it carefully because in that moment, questioning Phoenix felt like I'd be betraying the only people who had ever applauded my existence. Mom's voice carried from the hallway, broken and raw. She was crying, saying she wouldn't leave without me. Phoenix tilted his head, his tone dripping with understanding. Maybe staying overnight would give everyone time to process. Sometimes love looks like space. Going home felt impossible anyway, not after everything I'd done. So I nodded. Mom's face crumpled when she realized I was actually choosing to stay. Then Phoenix held out his hand. Your phone, he said gently, like he was asking me to give up a burden instead of my last lifeline. My stomach nodded. No phone? No messages? But weirdly, I also felt relieved. No more hundreds of angry texts about the backyard festival disaster. I placed it in his palm, and he locked it in a drawer with a tiny key he slid into his pocket. He showed me the bathroom, handed me white clothes identical to everyone else's. That night, I lay awake on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling while footsteps creaked outside my door. Muffled voices floated down the hallway. My chest buzzed with fear and this strange, restless excitement. For the first time, I was doing something that wasn't planned, corrected, or criticized by my mother. At 5:30 the next morning, a knock pulled me from restless sleep. A man led me into a large room where 15 people sat cross-legged in a circle. Phoenix introduced me as their newest family member, the one brave enough to cut ties with toxic dynamics. One by one they spoke, their voices soft, affirming. You're so courageous. You're already glowing. Most people never have the strength to break free. By the time the circle ended in applause, my throat was tight. I couldn't remember the last time anyone celebrated me just for existing. Afterward, Phoenix presented another document, the Values Covenant. Pages of vague, poetic phrases, community sustainability, releasing attachments, radical honesty inside our sacred container. The language was so cloudy it could have meant anything. And yet, I signed without hesitation. Because doubting now felt like betrayal. Phoenix held the paper high. Jackson has committed. The group rose as one, their arms wrapping around me, their warmth pressing in until that little voice whispering, "What have you agreed to?" disappeared under the weight of belonging. That evening's dinner was rice and vegetables, eaten in silence. Afterwards, Phoenix invited me into his office. Unlike the bare rooms we lived in, his space gleamed with rich wood furniture and certificates from programs I'd never heard of. He leaned forward, repeating back words I'd confessed earlier, about feeling unseen, misunderstood. I recognized your light the moment you arrived, he said, eyes locked on mine. And somehow I believed him. Trusted him. Even though we'd known each other for less than 48 hours. On the third day, I woke to voices outside my window. Peeking out, I saw 2 staffers speaking with my mom beside her car. Their posture was polite but unyielding, arms gesturing toward the road. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. Respect his journey, your presence is preventing his growth. Her shoulders shook. She pointed at the building, shook her head violently. But eventually she climbed into her car. Drove slowly toward the gate. I pressed my forehead to the glass, watching the taillights fade, watching the car shrink into nothing. My chest twisted with guilty relief and panic. She was gone. For the first time in my life I was truly alone. The next morning the knock came at 4:30. They handed me work clothes that smelled like sweat and soil, already worn by someone else. I followed the others into the garden, pulling weeds under the dim light until the sun crept over the trees. My back screamed within an hour, but no one else made a sound. By noon I was in the kitchen peeling potatoes until my fingers went numb, then scrubbing pots in water so hot it left my skin red and raw. After dinner I hauled trash and scrubbed toilets. 14 hours of labor day after day until collapsing into my bed, too tired to think. Blisters covered my hands. My legs trembled constantly. But every time Phoenix walked through, smiling proudly at me, nodding like I was doing something extraordinary, God, it made the pain feel worth it. Finally, someone thought I was doing something right. By Saturday, the teacher who had first driven us here pulled me aside. Phoenix rarely accepts anyone this quickly, she whispered. But he says your energy is exceptional. You're integrating better than members who've been here months. Her words lit something in me, even though my body was breaking down. That night, alone in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes until my knuckles cracked, I started composing letters to Mom in my head. Letters that said, "Asterisk, do you see what your constant criticism did to me? Do you understand why I grabbed the first person who said I was special? Asterisk." Letters that reminded her of the time she made me rewrite my college essay 17 times. Or the night she told my girlfriend I wasn't ambitious enough. But I never wrote them down. I just let the words swirl in my head, cruel and honest all at once, while my hands moved automatically through the steaming water. Part of me wanted her to know the damage she'd done. And another part of me was just tired. So unbearably tired. By the second week, Phoenix summoned me into his office again, that same calm smile on his face like he already knew what I was going to say. He folded his hands, leaned in just enough, and told me the next step toward true transformation required, a donation. $5,000, he said, like it was no more than a bus ticket. That level of commitment unlocks advanced workshops that can accelerate your growth, changes most people take years to achieve. My stomach dropped. $5 grand? I barely had $5 to my name. But then I remembered the emergency credit card buried in my wallet, the one Mom had sworn I should never touch unless the world was ending. And maybe, in a way, my world was ending. I told myself that hesitation was just my ego resisting change. So I slid the card across the desk. Phoenix's eyes lit up like I'd just passed some sacred test. "Your commitment," he said, "is remarkable for someone so young." That same week, our sleep schedule shifted. 5 hours a night. We'd collapse into our beds at 11, then stumble back up at 4 in the morning. Phoenix explained it was necessary. Sleep deprivation broke down the ego's defenses. And break me down it did. By midweek, I was forgetting what task I was doing halfway through. Catching flashes in my peripheral vision. Dizzy from exhaustion. Every time I mentioned it, Phoenix would nod reassuringly. This is normal during rapid transformation. By week 3, we had our first confession circle. One by one, people stood in the center and poured out their ugliest family resentments. When my turn came, I unloaded 20 minutes worth of every criticism my mom had ever made. From the way I walked to how my laugh supposedly grated on her nerves. The group nodded along, validating every word. Phoenix sat there, eyes knowing, like he'd been waiting for exactly this. For the first time, I felt stripped bare and understood. The very next day, I saw the other side. A woman had secretly called her sister. Phoenix dragged her into the circle, accused her of clinging to comfort instead of growth. We all had to stand around her, telling her how disappointed we were while she broke down sobbing, whispering apologies through tears. And my stomach twisted because I knew, just one wrong move and that could be me. Later, Phoenix pulled me aside. "Your revenge against your mother wasn't cruelty," he said softly. "It was bravery. Most people never find the courage to make their families face the consequences of their toxicity. You did." And just like that, guilt flipped into pride. Maybe I wasn't cruel at all. Maybe I'd been right to fight back. They assigned me a growth partner, a woman named Yasmin Coates. Her job was to help me process transformation. She was friendly enough but always carried this little notebook. Every conversation ended with her jotting things down, her questions careful, precise. I started watching what I said, feeding her the answers I figured Phoenix would want. By week 5, Phoenix had me record my testimony. He set up a camera in his office and told me to speak from the heart about Mom's failures and how the community had saved me. For over an hour, I spilled out words I wasn't even sure I believed anymore. Phoenix kept nodding, eyes glowing with approval, so I pushed further. When it was over, he clasped my shoulder. "Your story of escaping maternal oppression will inspire countless others." On my way out, the front desk woman whispered that my mom had been calling nonstop for 3 days. My chest tightened. I wanted to hear her voice, even if she was just yelling. But Phoenix appeared behind me, calm as ever. "Curiosity about your toxic past only blocks your future growth," he said, guiding me away as the woman deleted the voicemail notifications right in front of me. 6 weeks in, Phoenix invited me back to his office. This time, he handed me an extra cup of coffee. "You've earned a reward," he said warmly. "Tonight, a second helping at dinner." After weeks of rationed rice and herbal tea, that coffee was heaven. The promise of more food later made my stomach ache with anticipation. And when I finally ate my extra portion at dinner, the way others stared with envy made me realize how carefully Phoenix kept us all tethered to his approval. That week, I opened my mailbox to find a community sustenance invoice, charges for 12 workshops I couldn't even remember attending. $3,000. Confused, I brought it to Phoenix. He smiled. "Unconscious participation often goes deeper than conscious attendance. Your higher self absorbed the teachings while your ego rested." I nodded, pretending it made sense, and signed another authorization from Mom's emergency fund. The next morning, I noticed one of the women from the garden quietly packing her things. Bennett Cloud stood in her doorway, watching as she shoved clothes into a worn backpack without folding them. She kept her eyes down, moving quickly. At breakfast, no one mentioned her. When I asked Yasmin, she just shook her head and changed the subject. That night, Phoenix gathered us all. "Some people," he said, "choose the comfort of their old patterns over true transformation." He never said her name. He didn't have to. Later, he asked me to walk with him through the meditation garden. My exhaustion evaporated when he began speaking. "I've been watching you," he said. "Your energy. Your natural leadership. Most members take years to develop what you already possess." My chest swelled. He told me I'd been chosen for an exclusive inner circle workshop. Only the most promising were ever invited. This would place me on the path to becoming a future leader. The cost? A sacred tithe of $10,000. Phoenix handed me a thick stack of NDAs. "These teachings are too pure for unprepared minds. Protecting them is your duty now." I signed every page without hesitation, barely glancing at the dense legal jargon. Then I maxed out Mom's last credit card for the privilege. When I handed it back, Phoenix embraced me. "Your trust proves your readiness for the deepest levels of transformation." And in that moment, exhausted and broke, I still believed him. Week 9 rewired my life before the sun even thought about rising. At 4 a.m., the bell clanged through the compound like a tuning fork inside my skull, and we were herded onto the gravel for sprints, burpees, planks, the whole boot camp special, under a navy blue sky. Phoenix called it the cellular reset protocol, said physical depletion clears the channels so spiritual energy can move freely. Then breakfast was broth. Not even soup. Just warm, salty vegetable water that steamed up my face and did nothing for the hollow ache in my stomach. I wobbled through chores lightheaded, sparkles at the edges of my vision, hands shaking as I lifted crates. The dizziness became rebranded. I told myself it was my consciousness expanding beyond the body, like Phoenix said. When I nearly collapsed during kitchen duty, 2 members propped me up and whispered, "Your aura is getting brighter every day." That compliment went down smoother than broth. Later, in the farthest corner of the garden, where the cameras didn't quite reach, Yasmin and I knelt in the dirt, tugging at stubborn dandelion roots. Her voice barely rose above the crickets. "Do you ever miss home?" she asked, eyes on the soil, not me. I gave the textbook answer. "I'm choosing growth over comfort. Leaving old patterns behind for good." I even tossed in a serene exhale for effect. She smiled, but it sat crooked on her face. "I get it," she said softly. And something in her eyes told me that wasn't really the question. The following week, a certified letter arrived, heavy paper, law firm letterhead, my mom's name everywhere. It warned about indoctrination tactics, coercive control, demanded wellness checks. Phoenix read it aloud in morning circle with a theatrical, mocking cadence, like he was narrating a bad courtroom drama. People chuckled. When he reached the part about deprogramming specialists, the room erupted in applause like he'd delivered a punchline. He held up the pages on mind control techniques like a prop. "This," he declared, "is what fear looks like when it realizes it's losing." Then he crumpled the letter and fed it to the ceremonial fire, the paper curling into black lace. "The universe always tests a true path," he said, his hand warm and heavy on my shoulder. "Opposition means you're powerful." And I stood there, basking in the title powerful, while my mother's name burned. By week 11, Phoenix came to my room with a new stack of documents. An exclusive investment in the compound's organic farm, guaranteed to triple within 6 months. "Only for the most trusted," he murmured, sitting on my bed as if we were old friends. I filled out the credit application while he nodded approvingly. When he asked for my mother's social security number for the background check, the digits rolled off my tongue like an old song. I didn't even pause. The next morning, I delivered breakfast trays to the administrative office and caught a glimpse of Phoenix's desk, receipts as far as the eye could see. One ledger listed my $10,000 sacred donation as vehicle maintenance, neatly aligned beside an invoice from a Mercedes dealership. Designer clothing had been coded as spiritual materials. High-end restaurants labeled community nutrition. My stomach flipped. Then I swallowed the heat rising in my throat and whispered the new mantra, "Leaders need resources to lead." I filed the doubt away like a splinter I didn't have time to pull. That afternoon in meditation, Phoenix moved behind me and placed both hands on my shoulders. The weight, the warmth, the scent, something expensive that didn't smell like our laundry soap or vegetable broth, wrapped around my head. "You're my most promising student in years," he breathed into the space just above my ear. Pride and discomfort tangled like cords in my chest. Was I chosen or cornered? 3 days later, the substitute teacher, the one who first ferried us up here, appeared at dinner with updates. She tugged me aside. My mom had been calling former members, posting warnings online. "This is harassment," she said, flashing screenshots on her phone. "Your mother is trying to sabotage your growth." Embarrassment crawled up my neck. Our family drama was now a public spectacle with likes and comments. The next morning at 5:00, because time here lost zeros and mercy, during jump squats, a woman named Claire collapsed, clutching her chest. She gasped, eyes wide with terror. Phoenix barely glanced over. "A dramatic reaction to releasing old trauma," he announced, motioning for 2 members to carry her to the meditation room. We kept bouncing. No one mentioned her at lunch or dinner. When I asked Yasmin while we scrubbed pans, she shrugged. People process healing differently. The metal clang of the pots felt too loud. That weekend, Phoenix assigned me orientation duty for a new arrival, a nervous 19-year-old whose parents had driven her up from California. I sat with her in the welcome center, repeating Phoenix's script about toxic families and true purpose. "This place saved my life," I heard myself say, and the words tasted metallic. She nodded with that same desperate hope I'd brought in with my overnight bag 11 weeks earlier, and signed every page they put in front of her. Monday, rumors swept the compound like wind under a door. My mom had hired someone named Jolene Corbett, an expert at extracting people from places like this. Phoenix called an emergency meeting and paced the stage. "So-called exit counselors are predators," he told us, pulling up articles about forced deprogramming. "They kidnap, they manipulate, they profit." Heads bobbed, murmurs of agreement thrummed the air. And I caught the smallest thought flicker across my mind. How different is their manipulation from ours? I extinguished it like a forbidden match. 2 nights later, we stood in a dark hall lit by 40 flickering candles for the loyalty ritual. Phoenix's voice floated from the center, microphone in hand, smoke threading around him. When it was my turn, I stepped forward, wax warm on my fingers. He asked me to renounce my birth family and declare the compound my only true home. My voice wavered but carried. I repeated the words, reject the bonds of blood, embrace the purity of chosen family, imagining my mother hearing this and folding in on herself. The applause felt like a wave hitting my chest. "Freedom," they said. "Liberation." But my throat stayed raw. At dawn, Phoenix met me with another form, a $15,000 leadership training investment. My pen hovered. For once, I hesitated. The pause transformed his face, sunlight replaced by cloud. "Septic tank duty," he said evenly. "A week. Humility is the gate to wisdom." I spent 7 days in a plastic suit under a 90-degree sun, hosing and pumping waste while the smell seeped into my hair, my skin, my thoughts. Newer members strolled by on garden crew, green leaves clinging to their gloves like a joke. I kept wondering, in a place built on love and light, why growth looked like hauling sewage. By Friday, Yasmin found me behind the tool shed, where the oak tree's wide arms blocked the cameras. She pulled a manila folder from under her shirt, breathing fast. "I need to show you something." Inside were dozens of printed testimonies, ours. But the sentences were sliced, re-glued, turned into horrors we never described. My account of Mom's relentless criticism, rewrite that essay, fix your tone, try harder, had been chopped into. She pushed me down the stairs. Constant criticism became constant beatings. Neglect. Violence. All using my voice, my cadence, just rearranged. Yasmin's pages claimed her parents stole her money when she'd told them she'd handed it to Phoenix herself. They'll send these to everyone I know if I try to leave, Yasmin whispered, tears shining. The folder shook in my hands. Dozens of names. Dozens of lives. All trapped by their own words, remixed into cages. Heat roared through my body. I stormed across the compound to Phoenix's office, where he was casually editing video, blue light bathing his face. I slammed the pages on his desk. Why are you making us into liars? He didn't even flinch. Just offered me a patient smile. I'm revealing the truth beneath your defenses, he said, pulling up my original testimony. He highlighted words, dragged them across the timeline. Your conscious mind protects your abusers. The edits show your unconscious truth. My head swam. For a second I thought, is he right? Did I minimize my mother? But then I saw my own childhood like film negatives, vegetables I didn't want to eat, grounding when I broke curfew, essays rewritten until we both cried. She never laid a hand on me. Phoenix kept narrating, proud, showing how easily he could morph meaning. Victims often minimize, he said, voice gentle, hands quick. This helps you see. I watched the software cascade slices of me into stories I didn't recognize, and a cold resolve slid into place. That afternoon, back under the oak shadow, I found Yasmin. I need Jolene Corbett's number, I whispered. She glanced around, then slipped a tiny scrap of paper from her pocket, 10 digits scrawled in pencil. Be careful, she breathed. Phoenix has people watching the phones. I pressed the numbers into my brain, once, twice, 5 times until they planted roots. Then I tore the paper into confetti and tucked it under my tongue. It tasted like graphite and dust as I chewed, swallowed, and felt the number settle like a secret under my ribs. That night in my narrow bed, I stared at the ceiling while the hallway whispered with footsteps. My pulse drummed against the mattress. If I could just get to a phone, any phone, without being seen, if I could get 3 minutes alone to dial. The bell clanged for lights out, and the corridor went still. I closed my eyes and mouthed the digits again in the dark, counting the beats between the guards' rounds, picturing the path to the admin office, the drawer where Phoenix kept the spare keys, the small window near the copier that didn't latch all the way. One call. One chance. And if I missed it? Tomorrow at dawn the bell would ring at 4 a.m. again. And Phoenix would still be waiting for me in the garden with that same gentle smile. I slipped my feet to the floor, feeling for the softest boards, and reached for the doorknob. 3 days ticked by like slow drops of water before anything cracked. Then sirens. Wailing in the distance, drawing closer until red and blue lights splashed across the compound walls. 2 police cruisers rolled up to the gate. Bennett bolted out to meet them, shoulders squared, his white robe billowing like he'd rehearsed it. Phoenix swept us into the meeting hall, his voice smooth as silk. Stay calm. Let leadership handle the distraction. Through the window, I watched Bennett chat with the officers, shuffling papers, gesturing at buildings like he was giving a campus tour. Phoenix spoke over his shoulder to us. Sometimes concerned families send welfare checks. But remember, we are adults making conscious choices. My pulse pounded in my throat. I wanted to sprint outside to scream the truth, but senior members stood at every exit like sentries. My legs felt nailed to the floor. The cops stayed maybe 20 minutes, never stepping near the dorms, and then they were gone. Just like that. Phoenix praised us for spiritual composure, as if silence under lock and key was holy discipline. A week later, Phoenix announced wonderful news. Jolene Corbett, the exit counselor my mom had hired, had requested a meeting. At a coffee shop. With lawyers present. Phoenix beamed like this proved how transparent and reasonable we were compared to other groups. He said I'd meet her in 3 days, Bennett as my support. He handed me a neat little script to memorize. I was happy, I was free, my family just didn't understand. But the night before the meeting, Phoenix summoned me. His office smelled of expensive cologne and incense. Change of plans, he murmured. Off-site meetings are traumatic. I have something better. He slid a 5-year contract toward me, a permanent staff position. Helping run programs. My highest honor. My name would be legally changed to mark rebirth. The terms? Cut ties with my birth family permanently. Transfer inheritance rights to the community. When I hesitated, his eyes cooled. Remember, Jolene is a manipulator hired to destroy your transformation. Who do you trust? The next morning, in the admin building, I stumbled across a credit report Phoenix had left on his desk. My name. 3 cards I'd never applied for, balances maxed, $14,000, $12,000, $14,000. All recent. Car payments. Designer stores. Fine dining. My name. My debt. My future in ruins before I'd even lived it. That afternoon, while my hands shriveled in dishwater, Yasmin slipped something into my apron. A cheap flip phone, 1 number programmed in. Her whisper tickled my ear. 5 of us want out. We need someone brave enough. At 2 in the morning, I locked myself in the farthest stall and dialed with trembling fingers. Jolene answered on the first ring. I'm here, she said, steady and certain, like she'd been waiting for me all night. I whispered my location, Phoenix's threats, the videos. You have to say it clearly, she told me. Do you want to leave voluntarily? My throat cracked. Yes. I want to leave. She promised legal support and law enforcement within hours. Destroy the phone. Act normal. But by sunrise, Phoenix was at my door. Bennett beside him, broad like a wall. Phoenix flipped open a laptop. Footage filled the screen, me in the bathroom stall, phone to my ear. Then another clip, my testimony spliced and twisted, my own voice accusing Mom of beatings that never happened. Your mother's employer would be interested to hear what kind of woman raised you, Phoenix said, calm as ice. Bennett shifted in the doorway, arms crossed, blocking escape. Clip after clip played, my voice weaponized against me. Phoenix sighed like a disappointed father. Jolene has tricked you into betraying your transformation for toxic comfort. The very next morning, somehow, Jolene made the coffee shop meeting happen anyway. Bennett drove me in silence, his knuckles white on the wheel. The shop buzzed with normal life, cups clinking, laptops humming. And in the corner, Mom. Jolene. A woman in a suit. My lawyer. I slid into the booth, hands shaking under the table. Jolene spoke first, calm, clear, loud enough for Bennett to hear. Phoenix's threats to release edited videos are extortion under state law. The lawyer chimed in, and fraudulent credit applications in your name constitute identity theft. Federal crime. Bennett's thumb flew across his phone, texting. Mom looked different. Not frantic. Not scolding. Calm. She met my eyes and said, I love you. I'm sorry I made you feel like you were never enough. I don't expect forgiveness. I'll be here when you're ready. Something cracked open in me. I looked away before I crumbled. Phoenix called my phone 17 times in that 1 hour. I didn't pick up. Back at the compound, he waited at the gate, mask of serenity cracking at the edges. I was testing you, he said. You've passed. I want you to be my successor. The offer hit me hard, 18 years of being nobody and now this. But I remembered Claire gasping on the ground, Yasmin's trembling hands holding the folder of forged testimonies, my name on debts I hadn't made. I said no. Phoenix's face hardened. He listed every contract, every debt, every lie in my voice he could unleash. Until Jolene's lawyer called him directly. Calm, firm on speaker. Fraud. Extortion. Identity theft. 5 other members are prepared to testify. The state attorney is very interested. Phoenix went pale. His smile returned brittle. Of course you're free to leave. The next morning, 2 police officers escorted me as I packed my meager belongings. Members lined the hallways, jealous, disappointed, or quietly relieved. Yasmin brushed my hand, whispering, 3 more are calling this week. Phoenix stood at the gate, white clothes immaculate, jaw clenched so tight it shook. Mom's car rolled up. I slid into the passenger seat, the silence thick as we drove away. The first week back was hell. Panic attacks every morning, waking up expecting work assignments. Credit card companies hounding me for 40 grand. Mom helped file reports without mentioning the cost. She found me a therapist, Gabriel Cornell, a specialist in cult recovery. I sat in his office for 20 minutes, unable to speak. Finally, the words poured out, worthless and special at the same time, seen and stolen, chosen and destroyed. Gabriel didn't push. Just listened. Recovery was brutal. Panic at grocery aisles with too many choices. Flinching when Mom asked simple questions. Gabriel taught me to breathe again, to separate my thoughts from Phoenix's voice. Mom joined sessions. We practiced speaking without tearing each other apart. Slowly, awkwardly, we built something new. 3 months later, I was bagging screws at a hardware store. Not glamorous. But mine. 6 months later, I was paying down settlements, still in therapy, learning to trust my own thoughts. Dinner with Mom once a week, boundaries sharp but real. Phoenix's compound was investigated after more members escaped, but he just resurfaced in Arizona with a new name, a new program. Because men like him always do. And there will always be people desperate to feel special enough to say yes. Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.